is this.
Okay. I thought I had approved them all, but I'll take a look while I'm in here. Forget us, we're trying to find the
Cheers.
chair slides were uploaded last night, but they're not showing up in the list from Mid-Echo. So 1 second, please. That's weird. They're not there anymore. Did Data Tracker do a reset of some sort?
It's had some issues, it's true.
Because the meeting slides aren't there anymore. Okay, let me do a quick upload.
Right, but also there are 3 sets of slides and your list only had 2.
Yeah, I just approved a slide.
Oh, okay. It's the top of the hour. We will be starting in just a minute after we sort out a minor technical difficulty.
Okay, they're there now. All right. Hello, everybody. This is what you get when Glenn forgot to edit the title slide to say this is ADD at IETF 121. I've made a lot of dumb mistakes through the years on slides, but I think this may be, I may be peeking out here.
Oh, you peaked a long time ago. No.
Anyways, you are at ADD. If you're looking for a different session, you were in the wrong place. This is, of course, an IETF working group session, and it is covered by NoteWell. So please be aware of it. It covers a variety of things from participation conduct to IP rights, copyright, trademarks, patents, participation, a lot of great stuff that every IETF participant should be well aware of. In particular, being kind and patient with each other and conducting yourselves professionally and generously to everybody, and do not engage in any harassment. You've probably seen this. This is the meeting tool. If you have not so far gone into Data Tracker on your laptop and said, I'm here at ADD, please do so now. If you aren't with your computer, on the microphone right there, there's a QR code you can scan and record your attendance. We use this to plan out for future meetings to know how big a room we need to have. And it also keeps you out of trouble with blue sheets. These are resources for IETF Dublin. If you haven't figured out how to find the agenda, I don't know how you got to here, so I'm going to guess that you do know how to work the agenda. All right. Oh, I know the problem. So anyways, 1 second, please.
While there's some dead air, thank you to Tim Wazinski for being our volunteer note taker. It is always greatly appreciated.
Okay. Forgive me. The slides for the chair slides got messed up. I uploaded them last night and we did approve them, but they disappeared out of Data Tracker, and that's sort of the issue we're trying to deal with here. The first presentation we're gonna have we have 3 presentations after some talks from the chairs. The first one's gonna be Tommy Jensen, followed by Stefan Bortsmeer, and then Floria Obser is going to present. We'll go through this. But before that, I think the chairs, we want to have some comments about the some documents that are flowing through. So why don't you do that, I will quickly fix the agenda, the topic slides.
I am unprepared to make those comments.
All right.
So
Then bear with me. Give me
Yeah.
1 minute and I will fix this in data tracker.
the good news is we don't expect to take a full hour. So you will still get time back at the end despite the slight delay here.
I have figured out the problem. So, for those watching from home, the craziness was I had edited the file successfully, but I was uploading it from the wrong directory. That's why we had outdated slides. And I just uploaded the revision. There we go. And let me switch this over. My apologies, everyone. All right. Now it's working because I finally found the right slide deck to upload. Okay, so ADD, we covered the well material, and now we'll go to the agenda. I'm Glenn Dean, the guy who messed up the slides on the upload really badly. My apologies. And my co-chair is?
Hi, Dale, not Eric Vink.
Nope. Eric Vink is our lovely area director, who is going like, oh, I need a new co-chair for this working group because Glenn is so gone.
Oh, I thought you meant me.
No, you're here forever.
Both. You're gonna have to replace us both.
So this is the agenda for today. We're going to talk a little bit about some document stuff that's been going on. We've got a couple documents now in working group last call, or about to go. DNS resolver information. We think we're about ready to go there. Wait, this is the wrong deck. What the? I give up. I give up. This is.
He's gonna talk from his slides, and you just won't see them.
I can't win today. My apologies.
Workgroup chair outsmarted by the tools.
I mean, let's face. I'm sure you've all been in a conference room full of techies who can't figure out how to work the AV equipment, right? Like it's.
All right, we're just going to go old school here, and I'm going to do it this way.
Screen share.
Yeah, I'm just gonna screen share.
Hope you brought slides.
All right, I'm failing at this. Yes, I want to. Yes, I want to share screen. You want to just?
I wasn't in the full client, but I will.
Oh, I'm getting denied permission to share my screen. Well, that's what I was trying. So Taylor, you're going to try to share the agenda directly because the agenda is in Data Tracker. It's there. So
I'll hold your laptop screen up to the camera. Yes, got a printer.
well, tell you what. Instead of wasting time with me doing the first presentation we're going to have today is from Tommy Jensen, is handling encrypted DNS server redirection. Tommy, come up here, please, and I will get those slides up successfully.
Sure.
Well, I say that confidently, but I may be.
That looks on topic. Yes. See if I can get the microphone and avoid the projector light. Hey everyone, Tommy Jensen, Microsoft here to talk more about encrypted DNS server redirection. Next slide, please. Oh, does this work?
Yes, it does.
Try. Let's see.
Let's find out.
Is it working?
No.
Yeah.
If not, there you go.
Ah, yes. There we go.
That was me.
Oh, it was? You could have just let me think. So inconsiderate. Okay, so we've made a few updates, but nothing hugely different. Eric pointed out that we had some text in the body of the draft that really belongs in an appendix that was describing how we used to have 2 modes of redirection, and now we only have 1. That's in the appendix. Tiru pointed out that delegated credentials as a option for deployers to hand out short-lived credentials rather than trust their main private key with every resolver that could be redirected to and from, that star certs could be an option. There are no normatives introduced. We just mentioned, hey, this is a thing that a deployer could do. Think about it. And then on our own, we were realizing that it may help to point out to server operators, hey, please don't do things in line when you're talking about checking for compatibility, when you know what the properties of the targets are that you're going to redirect to, so that you're not waiting on don't make the client wait when you realize you are using TLS 1.2 and you don't know that the target does or does not support it. Next slide, please. This is a different Glenn, I swear. But earlier this week, after the hackathon, because I had some technical issues, I did a test of EDSR from my computer against an endpoint that John Todd from Quad 9 set up. Thank you. And it did work. We had one server identified as redirect 1, provide me with a target server whose certificate presented the original name and its SAN. I got the A and Quad A in the additionals from the original discovery. And then when repeating the process on the target server, I got back the same configuration, which closed the loop and told me that redirection was over. So it can work. Next slide, please. So one open question. Med, brought something up during the call for adoption that I had overlooked, and now it's in GitHub. Should we add support in res info to advertise that a server supports EDSR? Legitimately not sure what the working group wants to do here, so I'm raising it for the Q&A. We have a few options. One is to do nothing and not add it and say that we're just going to do the query, and if we get back config, great. Another is to add a simple flag so that there's a res info flag without properties that just says when this is present, the server supports EDSR. I suppose there could be another option where we try to add in data, but I included that for comprehensiveness. Please don't anyone come to the mic line and say 3. Next slide, please. So we need to close on that issue, clearly. We are looking for other feedback because I'm going to provocatively say that if there's no more feedback, it's getting awfully quiet. And aside from doing some more end-to-end tests, it's looking like last call because we did a lot during the adoption phase. So if you'd back up a slide, please, we'll just leave because that was the last slide. This is the open question that we have for the working group, but of course, any other feedback you have for us is welcome.
So I'm very encouraged to hear you think you're getting close to working group last call. That's awesome.
I'm an optimistic person.
So
Said with enthusiasm.
so just as a
I'm optimistic.
So in terms of pacing, do you think this would be before IETF 1 next I-22 or would it be around 122?
Bravely speaking individually without having spoken with my co-authors about this specifically, I would say no, because it would be nice to be able to come into the next IETF with more demonstrations of it working in real life.
Okay, so it'd be sort of like a 122 type thing. So you get a hackathon in, get some more demonstrations. Okay.
The queue is currently empty. Would anybody like to comment on this question of advertising in res info? Mr. Campling?
Yes, Marco Davids, SIDN. I just wanted to let you know that Stefan Botsmeyer is currently working on a draft to add DNSSEC validation to the res info record. So maybe interesting to have a look at that and see if it is some sort of inspiration for you.
Will do. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Campling.
Hi, Andrew Campling. Option 3 looks good.
Why?
No,
I gave clear
simple
instructions.
flag. Simple flag.
Because he's British.
In all seriousness, do you care about 1v2? 1 versus 2? Okay, 2. Add a simple flag, make it.
Those people remotely, Andrew indicated he liked option number 2.
Will someone check on Ben? Is he okay?
Yeah. Ben, the lack of comments is surprising. Oh, he's
Hey!
Hello. Yeah, I don't really care about this. I don't really.
Woohoo! We've hit the trifecta.
So I apologize. I didn't get time to test the Chrome implementation. Thank you for the explanation. It looks like it's about the use case is slightly different, where it's about the escape the bootstrap because you only had an IP address at first. So I will test it. I just haven't yet.
And just to be clear, Ben, you're not being held hostage by anybody that we can't see on camera, right? Like Tommy didn't send somebody there to make you say this.
Well, look, like I don't really. ResInfo is a debugging tool, right? So like, what would be useful for people debugging a thing here? I don't know. I mean, we could think really hard and try to come up with some stuff, but it's hard to guess in advance what people are going to need. So, you know, maybe we can come back to it. I can imagine, you know, being confused about like, well, am I talking to the ResInfo starting point or the ResInfo ending point? You know, is that something that would be helpful to distinguish? But these are all, you know, these are all pretty speculative and far out.
Okay. Thanks, Ben. If there's no one else, I guess we'll call it and we'll get back to work.
Thank you, Tommy.
Okay. Stefan, you're next up. We're on item 4.2 in the agenda. If you're following along for the agenda, that's actually successfully published in Data Tracker.
Okay.
Switch the slides.
I'm Stefan Bortsmeyer from AFNIC, and this is about adding a new key to REST-info. As you know, the RFC about REST-info as a registry to add new keys on the policy. Next, please. Okay. On the policy, next. There are many. Okay. Here, for instance, is an example for an actual public resolver, because of course it's very interesting to know about the policy of the public resolver you want to use. There are only two keys, QNAME minimization and an URL where you can get more information about the excellent DNS for all service. Because there are not many keys currently in the registry. Next. So the policy to register a new key is specification required. And if you already try to add something with this policy, you know that it is not very well defined. Next, please. So at the present time, but also because the registry is recent, there have not been any addition. The talk before suggested about such an addition, but we didn't exercise the process of adding keys. Next, please. So this is documented in this draft. Next. The idea is to add a key DNSSEC-val. The actual name of the key is not really important. The point is that, next please, it's about indicating DNSSEC validation. I would prefer if DNSSEC validation were mandatory, but it's not. So we have to specify it. Next, please. Apparently, according to the discussion, the working group, nobody is against or thinks that it would be harmful, but the biggest problem is, next, please. Specification required, what does it mean? For instance, is it sufficient to have a post on an IETF mailing list or an internet draft or RFC? It's not currently defined. You know, there is work on 8126 bis, a new RFC, but in the meantime, it's not completely clear. Next, please. Currently, there is an internet draft. Can I go to the IANA with this? According to IANA, it will depend on the experts. There are 3 experts for the registry. Maybe some of them are in the room. So it will depend on what they decide is a valid specification. Next, please. So if not an internet draft, individual RFCs that I will push through the independent service editor, or RFC adopted by this working group, which is a possibility. Next, please, and last. Okay, so as I said, BCP 26 is not completely clear. There are discussions around that, but nothing specific yet. Next and last, please. Okay, so if you have any questions, remarks, opinions, cookies.
Yes, Andrew Campling is still in the queue or freshly in the queue?
Hi, Andrew Campling. For the avoidance of doubt, not one of those experts. Which I'm sure will be a shock. Just a practical consideration. I hope we don't go down the RFC required route, because knowing how long the system takes, if by the time that they were agreed, it would probably be no longer required anyway. So hopefully, with the agreement of those experts, we might agree towards the sort of internet draft type scenario, so it can be done quickly and fairly painlessly.
About RFC required, even if we regard the specification required as official specification, permanent, etc., RFC is still simpler and faster than most other SDO publication streams. So, but yes, I would agree otherwise.
Okay, Eric Ving, the responsibility for this. Thank you for supporting the IETF and the speed of process. And by the way, we are faster than many one, even if it's difficult to understand this. The current meaning interpretation within the ISG of internet draft as a specification required is wrong. So, the ISG does not think that an internet draft match specification required. But as you said, there is a BIS document in the cooking. So that may change this, and notably fix the ambiguity about specification required versus internet draft. Last point, I think that must be a very simple draft, 3-page or 4-page, I guess. We can adopt end of this week and within group last call, and on we go. If it's very urgent, I can always request speed processing by RSC editor. And you get early adoption. Maybe that we can get early adoption as well.
It's not urgent, of course, but my concern is a bit the same as on the recoupling. It seems silly to take 1, 2, 3 years for some change which is completely uncontroversial.
The policy says this, right, in the ANA history, so a bit late to change.
Tommy Jensen, please.
Oh, sorry. You're good. Tommy Jensen, Microsoft. If it's something like this, where it's a simple flag, I have faith that we can move it quickly. Part of the reason it took so long to publish our first cluster of documents here was we had a lot of complications in interop. We're talking about a flag here. So either we can do it quickly and we should do it as a working group document, or we won't do it quickly because there's something we uncover that's an issue, and therefore we should do it as a working group document.
So you support a working group document, Tommy?
Yes.
Better.
Patrick Pacek, ISC. I don't have any say in this particular document, but I wanted to add context from the DNS op, where the RR type registry, which affects all the DNS implementations out there, has expert review policy. So anyone can go in and send it whatever they feel like. Experts look at it, oh, well, specified enough, let's go. So it seems that maybe unnecessarily complicated compared to the rest of the ecosystem, which has like more relaxed requirements. And over 40 years, they assigned like 97 RR types. So it's not like, you know, everyone will spam it with requests for anything, because it just doesn't happen in practice. Just in context.
Okay, but I'm not asking to change RFC 9606 and to change the registration policy. It is specification required. It will stay as it is for, I don't know, sometimes, unless the working group wants to change our RFC 6 months after its publication, but probably not a good idea.
Chris?
Hello. So I just wanted to talk about the actual draft. So what you're proposing, I believe, is that the in the res info you would say you need to get a Boolean flag. Does this resolver validate or not? If I take the example of the Power DNS recursor, there are 5 different levels of DNSSEC validation. So, but you know, it seems to me there might be value in going beyond a Boolean here. We could actually say something a bit more nuanced. What do you think?
I think that because the idea of the REST info is to be presented to the user in some way, it should not be too technical. I mean, there are many options in a typical resolver. For instance, if you use unbound, you can have things like hardening the resolution path. So maybe you want to communicate to the user that this resolver is specially secured. But there are so many possibilities that it seems hard to add a key in the REST info registry for each of these. Yeah, in my opinion, it has to be something clear for the ordinary user. On the 5 levels of Power DNS, I don't know about them, seems quite too complicated already.
Yeah, my understanding is that res info isn't going to be presented to the user. It's more of a debugging tool. But so I would suggest changing this from a Boolean value.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
we'll ask a working group about this.
Tommy Pauly, please.
All right, Tommy Pauly, Apple. Yeah, so thank you for sharing this. I do want to, I guess, clarify from a client's perspective when they are seeing this value, like what is the expected change in behavior or value to them, and also, you know, as a client implementer, like I think if we do this, it would make sense to do this as a working group document here or somewhere else. But I think it's also important to make sure that there will be clients using this and getting a particular value out of it. So I just want to understand that flow.
This is not specific to this draft. It's a general question about RFC 9606, it seems. So, because you can say the same for QNAME min or for any other key in the registry.
I mean, but I think specifically for saying that DNSSEC is performed on the resolver, like, for example, in our client stack currently, when we have the ability for applications to say, I only want things that are DNSSEC signed. But currently, in that case, we actually do the DNSSEC validation all the way at the stub resolver on the client and don't trust the recursive to do it there, which is like just a particular choice. So what I'm wondering here is, do we have, like, it'd just be good to understand, like, from some client or someone who would be using this, what this signal would tell them. Like, would it be sufficient for them to prefer using this? Would it change their interaction with the results? Or is it just like, this makes me like this resolver incrementally more, and so I'm just going to be slightly more inclined to use it?
I'm quite against this approach because we are publishing information on what people will do with it. In a way, is not our business. Typical example, when you said that if you want DNSSEC validation, you do it locally. No, it's one possible policy, but it's perfectly acceptable to use an external resolver with a secure channel. So I don't think that we should specify if you receive this key, you should do this, because the entire point of ResInfo is to distribute information, not to specify what the people will do with it.
Sure. No, I agree that we should not in the document specify what you should or must do based on the information. I would just like to hear from at least one implementation consuming this, that they would find it useful to have this. And it like, as long as there is some, then it's like, yeah, we should do this. If we don't understand who would actually take any different action or consume it, then it's just less of a high priority. It's more about a prioritization thing.
Hi, Tail. No hats, but following on with both Chris's, comment and your reply right there, for the purposes of distributing information, I very much like the idea of that we provide more than just a flag, especially in light of it being, possibly useful debugging information. I think that has value. And additionally, I hear your concern about the end user isn't going to know what to do with 5 layers of different DNS types. However, that's a user interface problem, which is normally what we, kind of shy away from in the IETF, as far as we can provide the information and then the UI can make the decision to, make it, dumb it down, or I don't like using that word, but, abstract away the complexity that's underneath what the multiple options are. So that's just my comment. Again, no hats, but that's where
It would be interesting to go back to existing keys, because you could say exactly the same for QNAME min, because you can have, for instance, strict QNAME minimization or lax QNAME minimization when you retry without minimization. So every key in the registry could have the same discussion.
Ralph?
Yeah, Ralph Akama. So in that same vein, I think we should make it easy, and DNSSEC has value. I mean, the value is you can be sure that the data you get is kind of like the data that the operator of the authoritative server put in there. I mean, given packet not mangled and encrypted. I mean, it's mostly used for encrypted connections to the resolver anyway. So there definitely is value in this. I kind of think make it simple and not complicated, because the other thing, especially with DNSSEC, I mean, this first time I heard about the 5 modes of Power DNS, but I know that I think Bind has extended don't expire the records or something like that option, and we have some other options. So I mean, all of the implementators do different stuff, and putting all of these operational things in our RFC, I think, is impossible. So keep it simple. DNSSEC is good, and make it.
Okay, and that was a cue. Thank you, Stefan.
Okay. Next presentation is Florian. Come on up.
Okay, so I'm Florian Officer. Speaking.
A little closer to the mic, please. Or even move it up.
Yeah, I think this needs to be higher.
I think it's the arm, that part, yes.
Maybe I speak like this. Right. So, hello, Florian Officer. At OpenBSD, I work on a validating a client resolver. And next slide, please. There, well, sorry, brain fart. Let me step back. Right. So DNS 6.4 together with NAT 6.4 can be used for a v6 only client to reach v4 only services by name. The downside is this does not work with v4 literals. So another translation mechanism is then 464 XLAT, which needs to know the prefix that the NAT 6.4 is using. And RC 7050 specifies a heuristic on how to find this prefix. The problem with 7050 is it has some security implications. And then it says you should use a secure channel, which in practice nobody does. Now there's a newer technology, Pref 6.4, which is a v6 router advertisement, which tells you the prefix, which is much easier to deploy. So that's why there's a desire to deprecate a 7050. This was presented in DNS Hub yesterday, and my understanding is this was well received. Next slide, please. Now, I mentioned that I was working on a validating a client, and I was under the impression that I need to know that DNS 6.4 is actually in place, because DNS 6.4 messes around with a DNSSEC. So I had the idea, well, maybe we just tell the client that DNS 6.4 is happening with res info. The first draft had actually also the prefix in there, but then Tommy pointed out, well, maybe don't do that, because then we have two places, the Pref 6.4 and the res info. So I dropped that. It's just a flag. And then Jen asked me to put more information in, hey, how does this actually mess around with DNSSEC? Why is this a problem for you? So I went back to the DNS 6.4 RFC, and it has a lot of words why DNS 6.4 does not work particularly well with DNSSEC. And then I'll continue reading a bit more, and then it says, hey, if you're a client and you want to do your own validation, you need to set the CD flag, checking disabled. I went back into my code, and it actually does this, so I totally had forgotten about that. So yeah, I technically have a draft now for which I no longer have a use case. But since it was already written down, maybe someone else has a use case for it. It's basically kind of, I was inspired by Stefan's draft. And yet, if you're using it as a debug info, it might be worthwhile to know that the DNS 6.4 is happening. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or?
Yeah, Tommy.
Tommy Jensen, Microsoft. Thank you for iterating with us on this on the mailing list. I do think that there is value in being able to have the server tell us, I'm intending to do DNSSEC without having to play the games we do right now to see, like, this should have validated, did it, in a standard mechanism for debugging purposes. I can't say right now that I'm going to have a product use case today, but this seems clean and straightforward and something I will come back to the next IETF with more thoughts if this is something you want to push. And if it's not, then that's a shame. We should think about it.
Anyone else? No? Thank you, Florian.
Thank you.
I'm going to try something really bold here. Give me a second.
I can't wait. I think he has 7 copies of the chair slides now. Hey, there's a set of slides.
Make the computer average.
Yeah.
So that's the core of the agenda. The other thing we wanted to talk about was the status of this draft, which has been bouncing around a little bit. So obviously, we did not put this on the agenda for today's conversation, largely because both Tiru and Dan were not present, and we thought it would be a high bandwidth conversation to have when at least one of them is in the room. If you recall, this is connected with the ongoing discussion about provisioning on devices certificates. And as we got into this draft, we discovered that there was a bigger problem here than was just ADD related. And that was then recommended to the authors to take out the stuff about provisioning certificates, that problem space, and take it someplace else. They did that yesterday over at All Dispatch, where they talked about the general case of how do you do for printers and devices and all this other kind of stuff. How do you do that problem space? And how do you manage those certificates? While that conversation is inappropriate for ADD, there's another part of that conversation, which is the original reason they did the draft, which was how do you use it for establishing secure connections to encrypted resolvers in a home network in situation. So they've updated this draft and they've just put it, I saw they go through yesterday. They've updated this draft here in the data tracker with the certificate provisioning part taken out, the AD specific focus kept in and trimmed down. So I'd like to draw your attention to go read it. The chair's plan, and we've talked to Eric about this, is that we are probably going to try to have an interim meeting between now and Bangkok where we can specifically focus on talking about this draft and the directions that the group wants to take it in to see where we want to end up. This continues to be a problem that we have proponents in the room that say, this is the problem I need to solve, I need to address. And we've got other people in the room saying, it's not a problem. We shouldn't be dealing with this. We should skip over it. From the chair perspective, we do not see a clear one way or the other, whether to keep working on it or to end it. So we're going to continue to discuss it for now. So that's the plan. We're going to set up an interim meeting after this meeting, but before 122, and we'll do it online and see where we go from there. Any comments on that before we say goodbye?
Eric?
Ben, I think Ben. Ben's
yeah. Hi, Ben.
Hey, I understand why this was the plan, but after All Dispatch, it seems like there's another overlapping conversation happening here and another sort of process happening in the bureaucracy that seems like it conflicts with this plan.
That's a good point, Ben. And part of our thinking as well, especially after the All Dispatch, is to not hold this interim tomorrow. It'll probably be like early in the new year. That way, maybe has a chance for the All Dispatch conversation to take place. This, Eric, I'm looking at the AD in the room. This does seem to be an ISG issue of where do we do this and where does that other part take place, if at all. I know there's a lot of different scenarios put out, whether it's a new working group, whether it's send it over to an entirely different standards org, or we just punt it and say, hard problem, impossible to solve. So, and I know you don't have a solution. I don't think you have a solution yet, but we have a problem that we have a dependency on before we can move forward.
What standards org do you want to send it to?
Okay, I'll
All Dispatch, there's a long list of suggested.
So if I remember correctly, the All Dispatch outcome for this specific draft was not that clear. It was not a group of creating. I think it was a two-step procedure. We need to go back to the minutes, right? But it was the one which was the less clear in the all dispatch. We need to wait. Now, maybe if we organize a working group for this problem, we can take the remaining part of ADD into this working group. That would be a bit simpler, maybe. Honestly, it's too simple. It's too early. Does not prevent really to work as individual draft and exchange command with Tiru and others.
Yeah, I mean, part
in
of the
this group,
thinking we
right?
had in the conversations with the authors, Eric and the chairs, was that by taking out that dependency from all dispatch and creating a sort of a box, we could talk about all the pieces that are on the box and let the box work its way through the rest of the process. But Ben's point is well taken as well, that all dispatch was, there was some potential outcomes, but it wasn't clear from my being in the room what the exact outcome was. So, okay. All right. Any other comments on this? All right. Well, thank you for everybody for your patience with the successful slides. This is the end of ADD for today. I promise to have better slides next time if I'm still one of the co-chairs and Eric hasn't had me shot.
Wait, he has that power?
He's an AD. He has ultimate power. All right. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah.
And thank you, Tim, for being our scribe.